Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We begin in the name of the God whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. We had already started doing the translation of Ayatul Kursi, the famous verse of Surah Al-Baqarah, in the light of the little principles that we've already understood. And we had reached towards the very end of the verse, which we shall continue today in this session for the purpose of trying to see how the principles that we have learned as yet do get implemented in the Quranic text. And you know, this exercise is always going to be very important in the process of learning that we have undertaken, because the reason why we are doing all this is to learn the text of the Quran directly, trying to understand what it means. So we're trying to figure out that when there is in the Quranic verses a noun which is taking rafa, the nominative case, or nasab, the accusative case, or jar, the genitive case, why does it so happen? And because we have gone still further to understand mudaf, governing noun, and mudaf ilayh, the governed noun, we do also look at the possibility if we have some cases of mudaf ilayh as well in the text. So now I will continue with the part that was left in the last session, which was wasi'a. Wasi'a is a verb, and we have not as yet talked about verbs. Kursi. Now, the parts of the noun that precede the very last part of it, the very last alphabet, or some more, those parts are just there to, the symbols are there to show what the pronunciation is. These are the harakat, we've already seen it. Wasi'a kursiyuhu samawat. As-samawati wal arda. Now, wasi'a is a verb that it is spread across. What? Kursiyuhu. His kursi, chair, which is throne, symbolizing in the metaphorical understanding the administrative power, jurisdiction of the Almighty. It has spread. So wasi'a is a verb, and as we have already seen that in case of verbs, we always look for the file, the doer of it, which is the subject. And the file of a verb would always take the rafa case, the rafa i'rab, the nominative case. So don't be surprised if you find rafa over here. That's what is wasi'a. Wasi'a, spread across. What? His kursi, his throne. So throne is what is spread across, the doer, the subject of it. The question that should come to your mind is, why is it with one single harakat and not double, which should be normally the case if the noun is not preceded by alif lam? The answer is the same which I've been mentioning in the earlier part of explanation of the earlier part of the verse as well, that this again is mudaf. This is the governing noun, and you know that mudaf, like Baytu Zaydin, always has a single harakat towards the end, despite the fact that it is not preceded by alif lam. Just to make it more close to what we are doing, Baytu Zaidin, Zaid's house can be his house as well, he being Zaid. So even in that case, it's going to be Baytuhu. So the single one solitary harakat symbol is actually signifying the fact that it's a mudaf, it's the noun which is governing. So that's why kursiyu is in rafa, but it has one symbol of dhamma, of pesh in Urdu, and it's followed by hu, which obviously is mudaf ilayh. Now, as soon as I say that, a question arises as to why hu is not apparently in jar form, because as we have seen, all mudaf ilayh, like Baytu Zaidin, Zaid, is in the jar form. They are in the genitive case, simply because they are mudaf ilayh, they are governed nouns, but seemingly it's not the case with who. Let me say that we'll do it later, but to give you an indication, it indeed is in the jar form. The rule has not been violated here. The only thing is that who is a kind of a noun. Well, it's a pronoun which sometimes you would find, well, in most cases, would not take any changes in its appearance. It stays the way it is. So this is, I'll call it an exception, but it indeed is in the jar form. Had there been a noun instead of it, like say, had it been Kursiullah, Allah's throne, Kursi, Allah would have been in the jar form with a kasra towards in the lower part of it. Okay. Wasi'a kursiyuhu. His throne has encompassed, has spread across as-samawat. Now, this symbol as-samawat is apparently a jar, but I hope you would recall that when we did the different forms that are there in the case of nasab and jar, we found that when there is a plural feminine noun in the case of nasab as well as in the case of jar, the apparent form takes a kasra, a zair in the lower part of, beneath the. So when you have a feminine noun in plural, which as-samawat is, normally when you have a noun like that with atin, muslimatin, mu'minatin and as-samawatin, it is actually a plural feminine noun. If you have a kasra, a zair, underneath the ta, it has two possibilities. It's either in the form of nasab or in the form of jar. Do not be fooled, do not be deceived by the kasra, by the zair, because it could also be nasab. Here, it's nasab that is causing the kasra to be there and not jar. Why? Because the throne of God Almighty, His throne has spread across where? As-samawat, on the heavens, wal ard, as well as the earth. So this is the object, the maf'ul bihi, which is actually the reason why it has taken the nasab form. There could be a debate as to whether it's maf'ul bihi or something else. My preference is at the moment that it's maf'ul bihi, which is what we've already studied. And for that reason, you find that al-arda has a nasab, which is, quite understandable, because as-samawat also has a nasab, even though in its appearance it is taking a kasra, which is actually also the symbol of nasab when it's plural feminine noun. So wal arda is again joined by waw and therefore it will have the same grammatical, call it Arabic form as as-samawat. وَسِعَ كُرْسِيُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَلَا, and la doesn't know, la is for negation, وَلَا يَؤُودُهُ. This is a verb again, and at the end of it is a pronoun, and doesn't tire him and doesn't cause fatigue to him. What? حفظهما. حفظهما. The protection, the security, the administration of both of them. Both, that is the as-samawat wal ard. Their protection doesn't cause him to get tired. So this is a verb, and obviously whenever a verb appears, the verb is going to demand the presence of a doer, which is a subject, which is a file. And here you have hifzu, its file, its subject, and understandably therefore taking a rafa form, which again is coming with a single harakat symbol rather than double. And the reason again is the same, that it again is in the form of mudaf, the governing noun, and therefore it takes only one harakat, one symbol, and not two. And huma is mudaf ilay, it's the governed noun, but as in the case of who in kursiyuhu, this also is a pronoun, and it's the entire category of pronouns, by the way. They're not pushed by what changes are there in their Arabic form. They are unmoved. So that's the kind of principle that is there in Arabic about them. وَلَا يَؤُودُهُ حِفْظُهُمَا وَهُوَ, and he is. This again is a pronoun. وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الْعَظِيمُ. He is exalted and he is great. وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الْعَظِيمُ. Now, here you have a mubtada and followed by two khabar. So, when you have a mubtada, it's inquisitive. It's a starter, the starting noun in a sentence, which has only nouns. There is a starting noun, inquisitive, and then there is an information about that noun. And then you have khabar, which is the enunciative noun, which is the information about the noun. So, وَهُوَ is the mubtada, the starting noun, and al-Aliyyul Azim is the khabar, which is information. That is why it is taking a rafa in both, because as we've already studied, that mubtada, inquisitive, always appears in the form of rafa as well as khabar. This mubtada, huwa, is not apparently taking rafa, because again it's a pronoun, and about the pronoun we'll talk more about later when we discuss pronouns in detail, that they do not accommodate any changes in their appearance, no matter what form of Arab they are found in a sentence. Right. This was a practice session for making an attempt to apply the little principles, number of principles that we have already discussed. Now, we move on to continue to understand the different possibilities why a noun, when it appears in a sentence, takes different forms of Arab. As you would recall, we've already done rafa and jar. And I mentioned that rafa, the nominative case, and jar, the genitive case, they have a limited number of possibilities as to why these two cases, forms of Arab, appear on a noun in a sentence. Then we started a discussion on the third, well, in the normal sequence when it's mentioned, we mentioned 3 Arab, nasab comes as number 2. But in our discussion, I relegated it to number 3 position because it has a far greater number of possibilities why any noun would take the form of nasab. So we've already started the discussion, and we've already discussed that nasab, the accusative case, it has a number of possibilities. And the first and the most important possibility we have already discussed, which is maf'ul bihi. That is the subject. Now, we are going to start the discussion on the number 2 possibility, why a noun could be in the form of nasab in a sentence in Arabic, which is hal or halat. We take it for the time being as state. State. If there is a better expression in English, I'll come up with it later. But right now, let's agree that when we're talking about hal, we're talking about the state in which a certain act was either done by somebody or was happening on him. This in Arabic is done when you have to mention, for example, that, let's take the same oft repeated example, repeated so many times that some of you might get fed up with it, but it's always probably useful to have the same example so that we're not lost in the discussion of vocabulary, and we're really focusing on understanding how the different forms, the different principles get applied. As far as vocabulary is concerned, we can talk about it later, and obviously when you read the Quran, you get more and more vocabulary of it. Dharaba, beat up, Zaidun, Zaid, Khalidun, Khalid. Now, you want to mention the state in which, for example, Zaid was when he was beating up Khalid. So there is a way, a pretty comfortable way in which it can be expressed in Arabic, which is bring in the appropriate word for what you want to say. For example, I want to say that he was actually laughing while he was beating up. When you say laughing, you would say dhahika is the verb, which really means he laughed. But the one who laughs, the noun expressing this verb is dhahikun. And you would find that this is a normal pattern in Arabic, that you have a verb in many cases, not all, but in many cases. And you put the verb in the form of a noun in this mold. Add an alif in the middle, and you will have the noun, which is the doer of dhahika. Dhahika, dhahikun. Dhahikun is the one who laughs. Now, I have put a rafa at the end of dhahikun, well, for no good reason. Honestly, that's what the pattern is, that when there is no Arab and you've got to put some Arab, by default it's rafa, but it could be nasab as well as jar. So, I'm not going to the details of this discussion, but just giving you another example. Alima is a verb and the noun is alimun, and so on. Right. Now, dhahikun is the one who laughs. Now, you take this noun, you put it at the end of the statement and just simply put nasab, and the trick is done. Remember that when there are two symbols of fatha for a nasab, when obviously there is no alif lam or it's not in the form of mudaf, which is the governing noun, then it would not, then it would take two harakat, two symbols, and alif is also added. Now, what it would mean is that Zaid beat up Khalid while he was laughing, in a state of laughing, while he was laughing. Now, this whole statement, which in English is actually taking quite a few words, in Arabic, only one word would suffice, and that is dhahikan. The fact that it is appeared in this sentence where there is a verb and you have put a nasab on it, the job is done. So that is what is called hal. You know, the hal, the state of the subject, and should I also say object? I'll talk about it later. When you want to express it in a sentence, you just have to do bring in the appropriate noun, and the trick is going to be done. So that's why you have a nasab. Now let me also say that if you were to question me that why do you think that this statement is actually suggesting that Zaydun, the subject, was laughing while he was beating up Khalid, and why is it that Khalid was not laughing? I mean, what is there in the sentence that gives you the confidence to claim that it was Zayd laughing? Well, my answer is nothing. Normally you would assume that the one who is beating up is the one who is going to be laughing logically, and not the other one. But it could be equally possible, as far as the manner the statement has been phrased, that it could also, this dhahikan could also be applicable for Khalidan. And obviously, if you have used this statement in a context, if you are seeing both of them, you can tell from the manner a person is behaving as to whether it's Khalid who is laughing or it's Zaid who is laughing. And if you have the sentence in a text, in a story, you would still be able to probably make out. But what I'm saying is that in Arabic, if this statement has appeared like this, both possibilities, that is Zaydun, the subject, or Khalidan, the object, could be the ones who might be laughing. There could be another third interesting possibility, that both could be laughing. Zaid, while beating up Khalid, probably doing it gently, jokingly, and Khalid getting beaten up is also laughing. Now, when both are laughing, obviously you have to come up with a noun which is expressing the double presence of two nouns, not one. And of course, the double noun is going to be not dhahikan. It has to be the tasniya or musanna of dhahik, which is either dhahikani or dhahikaini. And obviously, I have to ask you whether, if you have to say that Zaid beat up Khalid while both were laughing, is it going to be dhahikani or is it going to be dhahikaini? And I'm sure that all of you would say it's going to be dhahikaini. Why? Simply because of the fact that dhahikaini is halat in this statement, And halat is what appears in the form of nasab, and double noun, noun expressing two of the same, when it appears in the form of nasab, it comes in the form of alimaini, muslimaini, and zahikaini. So Zaid beat up Khalid while both were laughing or in a state of laughing. Now, when we have this, started the discussion on hal, let us complete hal. There are two other possibilities, even though we are right now talking about simple noun and the manner it's taking different forms of Arab. Let me complete the discussion on halat, at least in principle. And I'm doing it because lots of the other possibilities also there in the Quran, which is halat can appear in the form of zahikan, nasab, and sometimes the same sentence, Daraba Zaidun Khalidan, and instead of zahikun, it would be, instead of zahikan, it would be Vahuwa zahikun. Now, Vahuwa zahikun is a complete sentence in its own right. It's a mubtada and a khabar. This is in the form of rafa, and I'll tell you later why I'm saying it's in the form of rafa. It's a pronoun. The pronoun remains unmoved no matter what Arabic form it takes, but still nonetheless it is in the rafa form. Discussion later inshallah. But zahikun is khabar, and it is in the form of rafa. It's a full sentence, but this whole sentence appears in the category of halat or hal, state, in which this verb was done in the sentence where it appears towards the end. So what we gather is that on the one hand, vahuwa zahikun is a full sentence, a brief sentence. On the other hand, this sentence is also expressing the understanding that Zaid beat up Khalid while he was laughing. Or obviously you might say Zaid beat up Khalid while he, which is Khalid, was laughing. And we'll continue this discussion in the next session as well. May the Almighty enable us to understand the language of His book, to be able to understand His book properly.